Okay, now we're at Chapter 10, Part H. We'll be calculating the following problems using compound interest. Before we start into calculating using compound interest, let's just talk about what compound interest is. Sometimes when you take, I know when I had a student loan, it was done this way. As I took my student loan, let's say I had $5,000, and then they would calculate my interest each period, and then they would come back to me and say, we understand that you don't have the 5,000 right now, but would you like to pay off the interest, which is 300? And of course I said, no, I don't have any money. And they said, that's fine. So for the next period, rather than my principal being considered 5,000, the principal was considered 5,300. And then they calculate the interest of that and then come to you again. You want to pay it off? If not, then they'll add it to the principal and it'll keep on going. And as you can see, when they keep adding the interest to your principal, that interest keeps increasing as you go. So you could calculate these on your own. It would just take you a while. But that's in essence what's happening whenever you're calculating a compound interest. Let's get a clean sheet of paper. And luckily, we don't have to calculate it the long way. Instead, a nice mathematician went through and created this table that we get to use to calculate our compound interest. And we get to use it much, much easier than calculating it on our own. Some other things that we need to remember is if I say that something is compounded quarterly, then that means that it is compounded 4 times within a year. So 4 times a year. If I say that it's compounded semi-annually, then that means that it's compounded 2 times within a year. And if I say that it's compounded annually, then that means it's done once per year. This is important because if they give us a percentage rate and the percentage rate is considered an annual percentage rate, then we have to consider how much is that each compound period. So if you're given a 12% APR or annual percentage rate, but it's compounded quarterly, then that percentage is divided out over 4 times within that year. And so you would divide your percentage rate by 4, which would make it 3% each compound period. And another thing to remember is if you're doing it for 5 years and you have 4 times each year, then that means total you'll have 20 compound periods. So those are the main things to remember as you go through here, that if you're working with your compound interest table and it says quarterly, that's 4 times within that year. You'll divide your percentage rate and you'll multiply your number of years. So same thing with semi-annually, only it would be divided by 2 or multiplied by 2, and then annually be divided by 1, which would be itself, or multiplied by 1, which again would be itself. Okay, let's do number 23 and 24. On 23, it says we have a principal of $5,000. It says my interest rate, and this is an APR, is 8%, and my time is 2 years. My compound periods is quarterly, which means 4 times each year. Since it's 4 times each year, I'll take and divide my percentage rate so that it's 2% each compound period. I'll multiply my time because we compound it 4 times each year for a total of 8 compound periods. When I look at my my compound interest table, my 2 is going to be my percent and 8 is going to be my N. Now I'm going to pull up the compound interest table. All I have to do from here is go to 8 and then across to 2%, and that number right there is going to be my multiplier. Let me pull up my calculator because I surely cannot remember that number. I'll just punch it in my calculator. That will help me get it. So 8 and then go across to 2 and there's my number. 1.1765938. Okay. Now I go back to my problem and I take my multiplier, multiply that by my principal, and the amount that I get is going to be the compounded amount. The compounded amount is in essence our maturity. It will include my interest plus my principal, and so my compounded amount is $5,858.30. And then it also wants to know how much is my interest. Since I have my compounded amount that includes my principal and my interest, all I have to do is take my principal out and I'll be left with my interest. So that means my interest equals $858.30. Be sure to do number 25 and 26, and if you have any problems with that, just let me know and I'll be glad to go over it again. 25 and 26. 25, the answer should be $12,245.20. And 26, your answer will be $3,045.20.